So we were talking about HR planning process. So we discussed up to this point techniques for forecasting. Now the next step is to assessing the current HR supply. Assessing the current HR supply. So what is current HR supply? Current HR supply here means that the currently uh, the current employees that we have, the employees that we are having currently, is simply known as current HR supply. Assessing the current stock, HR stock. HR stock simply means that the number of people that we are having in the organization, present number of employees. Assessing is facilitated by HR skill inventory. Most of the organizations maintaining their employees profile. In other words, an inventory. Inventory means a database, kind of a database about the current employees, right? Their names, their designations, their job duties, their key performance indicators, their private information, personal information, right? Their potential promotability positions, right? So these things are their blood groups and their personal informations, right? So all these are recorded and maintained in a separate database. So that is called as, technically called as skill inventory. Skill inventory. Their competencies, for example, their qualifications, their assignments done, past experiences, all these have been recorded, right? So this record is known as skill inventory. So skill inventory refers to the assessment of present and the potential capabilities of the present employees, right? So we can go for the, once the demand is forecasted, we can directly go to the HR skill inventory, HR skill inventory, right? So we can refer the skill inventory and find whether there are sufficient number of employees who can be found internally to meet the demand we forecasted, right? So let's say the demand forecast, we got 100 employees in the demand forecasting. For the coming 5 years, we need 100 employees. Then initially, we need to go check the HR skill inventory, whether we are able to find out that 100 employees from the skill inventory. Maybe sometimes there are some employees who has the potential to be promoted, right? So maybe sometimes there are employees who have already completed the current job position and are waiting for the next promotion, right? So the vacancy that is subjected to the promotion, then obviously we can find a person from the internal job skill inventory, right? So therefore, HR skill inventory assessment can be done in order to find out the sufficient, whether we are able to find out sufficient number of people to meet the estimated demand. So sometimes in some organizations, skill inventories are computerized records, right? So by simply pressing one button in a search query, or by simply typing the job vacancy, say for example, HR manager position was just vacant yesterday, right? So now we need to find out a person who is capable for doing the HR manager's role, playing the HR manager's role internally. Then just go to the internal HR skill inventory on the search bar of that interface, inventory of the interface. So just type the name HR manager. Then the possible candidates list are generated by the database. So then we can send a simple email, simply asking them to apply for this position, right? So that's how we can fill the vacancies. So internally we can find, because data, that skill inventory automatically, because that database has a software, and software matches the people to the jobs, being vacant, right? So all the job descriptions and job specifications are given and identify the software. And for example, HR managers job description and job specifications have already been given into the software, and software matches the requirement and people requirement and the person requirement, job requirement, and find suitable people. So people's qualification, because already HR skill inventory has all the information and job information as well. Once the vacant job is typed on the relevant space, then automatically match the people with the job. So currently we are having. So then automatically generate a list of possible candidates for that post. Then we can simply send an email notification to apply there. Right? So that's how we can find individuals internally. So job skill inventory has these informations, identification information like employee name, address, age, sex, etc. Identification information of the job title, job location, education, experiences, seniority, special competencies, trainings, current and past job performance, promotability, weaknesses, preferences, and all these other information can be incorporated in the profile. So it's kind of a profile. Right. So now after doing that, then next step is comparing demand and supply. So we estimated or we forecasted the demand. Then we tried to find out sufficient number of people to meet the demand, right? That is known internally. That is known as HR supply. Now, so let's say demand is 100. Internally, we can find 50 people. So the HR supply is 50. Then in the next step, in this step, what we do is comparing demand and supply. Demand 100, supply 50. Then simply by comparing, we can understand, we can identify whether we are having a shortage or a surplus. So in this case, 100 demanded, 50 supplied. So we have a shortage of 50 people. Now we need to plan how to recruit those 50 people, right? In the given time period. This is comparing demand and supply, right? So this is an example, job title, job demand, forecasted demand and estimated supply, and net employee requirement. Assistant operations manager, one needed. Internally, we can't find anyone, and so requirement is 1. Production supervisors, 2 needed, and those 2 people can be found from internally, and no need to recruit externally. Net requirement is 0. Production assistant, 17, 15 people can be found internally, and 2 people needed to be recruited from external. Right? So likewise, so we can add all together, and finally total column, we can find out how many people required. Net requirement, right? So then we can plan how to recruit all these things, all these people required. Right. So next step is when we have a shortage or surplus, what actions that can be done by the HR manager. So when there is a surplus, let's say the demand forecasted is 100, internal assessment, internal skill inventory assessment found that at the certain time period, so we have 150 people. Needed 100, but we are having 150. 50 people more, excess, oversupply. So therefore, then that is known as a surplus. Employee surplus is there. So then how can we avoid that surplus? Then HR manager need to make some strategies to avoid that surplus to maintain an HR imbalance. Right? So what are the actions to be taken? One is stop recruitment. No recruitment. We can freeze recruitment because we are having excess employees. Our task in the next coming period is to reduce the number of people that we are having. Transferring excess employees into the vacant positions. So sometimes while the time is running, vacancies can exist due to transfers, sudden deaths, and terminations, and all these reasons. So might ultimately the excess employees can be transferred to the vacant positions once the vacancy being arised. Then stop overtime. Still, we are having when still we are having the excess number of employees, the current employees' working time can be reduced. And they, for example, 8 hours can be reduced down to the 4 hours, and the rest of the 4 hours can be splitted into the excess number of employees. So that strategy can be done. Then everyone having a job, right? So that strategy can be done. So stop overtime. Then early retirement on voluntary basis. So nowadays we know that in the private sector we have we call it as VRS, voluntary retirement schemes. VRSs. VRSs can be introduced. So employees can be asked to voluntarily leave the organization. If they prefer to voluntarily leave, a package is offered. Rather than maintaining them until their retirement, it is a low cost option, giving them compensation and ask them to stay at home voluntarily. So that is known as voluntary retirement scheme, which is another strategy to reduce the excess number of people. And attrition. So that is a voluntary departure, right? So company can arrange facilities. For example, company can, let's say in these days, for example, the company can find future the foreign employments. Foreign migration consultancy firms can be contacted and ask them to come to the organization, and foreign consultancy, migration consultancy firm job fair can be arranged by the organization, and all the employees can be asked to go to them and can find foreign employment opportunities through them. And company arrange facilities. For example, ticketing fees can be given, telephone and printing costs can be given, transport arrangement can be given, right? So those are the low cost options rather than maintaining them through their retirement by paying their salaries, right? So company can facilitate for voluntary departure, voluntary leaving. So that's another option, attrition. Then another option can be done, which is the reduction of reward expenditure. So maybe sometimes managers might have been given company maintained vehicles, company maintained quarters facilities, company maintained, let's say, daycare facilities. And all these facilities can be reduced up to a certain level in order to minimize the extra cost. Right? So in case of, because we are not having sufficient number of businesses these days, due to that we are having sufficient number of people who are in redundant now, being idle now. So in that case, we need to pay higher cost, excess surplus employees, and surplus employees reward expenditures can be reduced. We can cut some extra reward expenditures, right? Company maintained vehicle can be removed, or maybe that facility can be removed, right? So so this kind of method can be applied, reduction of reward expenditure. Any kind of a reward which is in excess for a can be reduced for the employees who are in excess. Right. Layoff. What is layoff? Layoffing is a temporary stoppage of employments. What is that? Laying off is asking the employees temporarily stay at home, because which means that they are not terminated. They are not the company does not cut their name from their employment register, right, permanently. So their names and the employment is already secured in the job, in the organization. But the problem is, since we are not having sufficient number of businesses these days, employees are voluntarily asked to stay at home. So that is known as layoffing. So they may be asked to find another jobs, right? Until the economy become normal, until the business comes to the normal situation. So then once the company business comes to the normal situation, then they can be hired, right? They can be asked, the employees who stayed at home can be requested to come to the organization and have their regular jobs. So temporarily stoppage of the jobs known as layoffing. Then encouragement of leaves of absence without pay, no pay. Ask them to have no pay leaves. Then that is another solution. Formal outplacement facilities, that is helping to find jobs in the organizations, in other organizations, allowing to use the firms post and stationaries to apply for the jobs, and helping to start own businesses, for example, right? So those who are in excess surplus employees can be asked to start another business, and company can help them. As I told you, company can arrange foreign employment facilities, right? And the ultimate option is the termination. So we have Termination of Employees Act, and according to the provisions of this act, so if a particular employee is committed a misconduct, a serious misconduct, which is in which the employee is found guilty for that, in that case, the employee can be terminated through disciplinary inquiry process. So then through that also we can terminate certain number of employees who are having bad records in the company. Another option for reducing the number of employees is termination. So these are the options that can be done. Apart from these, the HR managers can use innovative other ways to reduce the number of people when there is a surplus of employees, to maintain the HR balance and reduce the HR cost. And the other side of that, if there is a shortage, right, how we can avoid that shortage situation. So easily we can introduce OT, overtime, increase overtime, and we can have the contract working, we can have the outsourcing, and we can have temporary employments. We can recruit employees on temporary basis or contract basis, and we can hire full-time employees, and we can training and development of the existing employees to have additional job responsibilities. For example, if the accountant is having an HR degree, so then accountant can be asked to look after the HR department as well, and he can be paid some additional amount to do that, right? So if a marketing manager is having a chartered qualification, so then marketing manager can be asked to play the accountant's role there, right? So otherwise, employees or lower level of employment positions, further training can be, development programs can be arranged, and ask them to look after other departments and other jobs as well, right? Until the businesses and the organizations coming into the normal normal position. So in case of shortages, right? So then invest on automation. So we can use capital substitution. capital substitution, which means that we can replace the human by automation. We can apply, we can install machineries to replace the human, right? So then in that case, if we are having more money in the organization, we can go for automation rather than just relying on people. Significantly, we can reduce the number of people. So then shortages can be minimized, right? So those are the options. And apart from that, HR managers can use other innovative methods to avoid a shortage, right? So assessing the HRP effort, assessing the HRP effort. So what is assessing HRP effort? Assessment is evaluation. Now, after doing all this, we need to assess whether our plan went or going correctly, effective, whether it is effective. So how you can determine whether the plan is effective, whether the plan is maintaining HR imbalance, whether the decisions that we have taken already are effective, right? So we need to determine. Otherwise, the entire process is not good, because any process at the end, once it is implemented, at the end, we need to evaluate whether the process was successful or not. So assessment must be there in any process, right? So the last point is assessing the HRP, human resource planning effort. So HRP effort has to be assessed in order to determine its impact on the accomplishing organization goals and objectives. Because can you remember, as we at the beginning, what we did? We initially looked at the organizational plans, strategic plans, corporate objectives that were converted into the human resource objectives. Now, at the last point, what we need to do is to evaluate whether we have our basic HR plan was able to achieve the organizational objectives or not. If it is achieved, then our plan is successful, right? So then how we can assess our HRP planning effort? By simply assessing, by simply comparing the current situation with the HR plan, right? So whether just to measure the current employment performance, not the employment performance, business performance, right? So we simply need to assess whether we have achieved our corporate objectives, right? So then in that case, HR plan is effective. So evaluating in terms of cost and benefits is difficult, right? So because since this is HR plan, human related behavioral things are there. So in that case, it is very much difficult to measure the cost and effect benefits. The ultimate thing that we can do, the only thing that we can do, since it is difficult to measure the cost and benefits effects, right? The only thing that we can do is whether we achieve the HR object, we achieve the entire corporate objectives high as per the corporate plan, right? And also, so another way of assessing the effectiveness of the HR plan is to have a HR balance always. If a particular HR manager having always HR balance at any point of discussion or any point of time, so that simply means that his plan is effective, because he is always maintaining an HR balance without having a shortage or without having a surplus. So which means that HR cost is maximized, optimized with the business needs. One way of assessing is determining whether the corporate objectives have been achieved. The other method is to determining, checking whether always the organization is having an HR balance. So those two ways are the ideal methods for assessing the HR effectiveness of assessing the HR plan, right? So these things, this slide says about those things, right? So now come to the last point. So that is basically one, because this, for this lesson, people resourcing by Stephen Pilbeams and Marjorie Cobrey. So this book is recommended for this particular lesson. And according to in this book, this type of a model is given by them, authors, to facilitate a human resource planning, right? So for example, these are the 4 steps: analysis and investigation, forecasting, planning and resourcing, and implementation and controlling. So these are the 4 steps to be followed for a very good human resource plan for an organization. So this is the model, right? Pilbeam's model. So therefore, so in the analysis and investigation, basically we need to analyze the business. First, we need to understand the level of the business that we are in. For example, what is our current turnover? What are our current profiles? Profiles are the employee profiles. What type of employees that we are having, and what are their skills, and what are their succession plans, promotion plans, and what is the manpower system. Manpower system is how people are recruited and how people are processed, trained, and development, and how people are released into their jobs, basically. So we need to understand this one, and we need to understand the external labor market as well. So whether we have high quality people outside, and whether they are available, sufficient number of people are available to recruit, right? And from which sources we can recruit them. For example, we have, suppose that in our organization is located in, let's say, Southern Province. How many educational institutions are located in Southern Province, for example? How many universities are there, right? How many, let's say our company is related to the engineering work. So how many engineering faculties are located around? For example, sources by which how we can recruit people, and the price is the average salary payment. So you need to know about that for each and every category of employments. What is the current market price level, current market salary level? For example, HR manager, for an HR manager, how much normally paid in the market? What is the market rate? For a lecturer, for example, if you are running a educational institute, planning for to run a private university, for example. So you need to know about the average salary level for a professor, right? So price is the average salary level. So you need to look at the external labor market, and you need to look at the corporate plans. What is our current performance, current productivity level? What is our current organization structure? What technology that we are using? What are the skill changes that will apply to our organizations? What are the rewards plans, right? Of our organization, reward in the sense that current employment rewards, right? So that is corporate capability, right? So current companies have abilities, and corporate strategy, whether we are going to follow a growth or decay strategy in the coming 5-year period. What are the new markets that we are planning to go, and what are the new opportunities that we are having appear to have, and what are the main objectives that we are planning to achieve during the coming five years, and what are the work methods that we are planning to adopt, right? So these things need to be reviewed and understand. So that is coming under the analysis and investigation. So then based on this, we can determine how many people that we are needed for the coming 5 years. For example, let's say if we are planning to have a growth strategy, which means that 5% market share in the coming 5 years, obviously we need more people. We need more people at the demand forecasting. Let's say we have a 5% turnover rate, right? We have 5% turnover rate. In that case, obviously, in the demand forecasting, that must be reflected. 5% will be needed each year. For the 5 years, 25% needed, right? Skill audit, let's say skill deterioration rate is very high. Skill outdated rate, if it is a, let's say, technology related company, IT is ICT related company, obviously you need to have more training and you need to update employees. So in that case, you need to forecast more talented employees, right? Succession plans, future promotion plans. So let's say promotion each and every year, you have each and every employee subjected to the promotion. So in that case, promotional system replace more people, right? So let's say, for example, each year, each employee is subjected to the promotion. So there is a high possibility to make vacancies. For example, if I am the lecturer, next year, if I am promoted as a professor, so then my lecturer position is being vacant next year. So for that, we need to recruit someone from outside to replace me. So likewise, if there is a very good promotional scheme, obviously there are more possibilities to have the vacancies. In that case, demand, more people will be demanded, right? So likewise, the demand can be forecasted based on these facts or these investigative components. So you need to investigate information. You need to find more information on these criteria, and based on this, you can determine the demand, number of people required. And once you've done that, then you can assess the internal HR supply. Internal people, you can look at the number of people currently that you have in your organization. You can just go for the database, HR skill inventory, and check whether the demand forecasted can be met by the current employees, and determine whether we are having HR imbalance or balance, right? So if suppose that HR imbalance is there, then for that imbalance is the shortage, for example. So how you plan resourcing for them, that imbalance, shortage, how you working patterns, how you recruit, and in which working patterns they are subjected to work, whether they are recruited in let's say a part-time basis, whether they are recruited in a flexible working arrangement, whether they are recruited on the basis of outsourcing, contracting out, right? So their working patterns need to be determined. The new organization structure need to be here. We have the current organization structure. Now with this new demand shortage, so this shortage must be replaced to the existing structure, right? As I told you earlier, right? So this is the current structure. So this is the current structure. With the new plan, new demand, you plan 4 more people are going to be recruited. 4 more people, let's say 5 more people demanded during the coming 5-year period. In that case, 4 more people, where you place those 4 more people in this organization structure? This is the existing structure. So then you place one new employee to this, and one new employee to this, right? So this is the new structure. This is how these are the current employees, and let's say these are the ways how you develop the new structure. So where you put them in the organization structure. So new organization structure need to be developed, right? And recruitment and selection, how we recruit those new, let's say 500 people needed, right? So likewise, we need 10 clerks, we need 20 executives, right? 20 executives, we need 100 operators, we need 5 managers, So that's how these 500 consist of, right? So these are the subdivision of these 500 subcategories of employment. Then how these people are recruited and selected. These people are recruited, let's say, by paper advertisement. These people are recruited by word of mouth. These people, these 100 people are recruited by referral, employee referrals, right? So you need to have a proper HR policy for these. And pay and reward, and how these new people are paid and how they are rewarded, right? Because these 500 people are not the same type of people. So they are representing different job categories and different knowledge levels and different backgrounds and different job assignments. So for that, you need to determine which type of a pay, which salary need to be paid, and how much, what are the rewards that they must be paid. Obviously, you need to revise the HR policy, pay and reward, and how their performance are measured and managed, and how what type of retention strategies that you need to do for them, and what are their health and safety procedures for the new employees, and how you release, how you train them, how you release into their jobs, and how you train and development, and how you maintain the employment relationship. In fact, these are the HR functions. All these are HR functions, right? So how you perform HR functions to those people? How you perform all HR functions to those people? So these are the HR functions, right? So you need to mention them. And so this, after doing all these, then you can simply implement. After implementing, you can check whether it is successful or not, achieving the organizational objectives.